today we are making a very special dish. This dish is even hard to find in parts of Kerala itself right now because the novelty of it is beginning to wear off, or maybe it's just maybe a little more effort than most of the things I do, that I feel like a lot of people do not make this anymore. Also, it simply isn't what people consider to be popular. It's called Ney Pathal. So it's a very simple, sort of way of making puris. To people who don't know what puris, it's sort of getting dough and deep frying it. So instead of baking bread, we deep fry the bread. The amazing thing about this recipe is that it is such an intrinsic part of Muslim culture in Kerala. So during the holy month of Ramzan, you see this being prepared in many houses across Kerala. So let's get started. So I've got a big open pan here and I'm just going to pour some ghee into it. So once the butter is a little hot, just add some water to it. So the ratio to be followed is 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of water. Once it heats up a little, you don't want it too hot, you just want it like a tad warm. Let's add the flour. Now the flour here used is rice flour. So just add this to the water. You can begin to see like little bubbles form in the water. The crackle is obviously, we've also added butter to the water, so just put it on low flame and sort of let it all mix. Don't worry if you feel like it's too dry or anything, as in when we are mixing the dough, we can look into it, and if need be, we can always add more water. Unlike baking, there really isn't too much, so a little more here and there is just fine. I'm also going to add a bit of salt to taste. Okay, just mix it up and switch off your pan and just sort of let it cool down. Okay. So the next part of the recipe is also really simple. Take a mixer. I've cut about like half an onion, about 1 cup of desiccated coconut, 2 tablespoons of cumin seeds, and give it a slight whiz. You don't want to form a really smooth paste with it. It again needs to be crumbly. You want to be able to bite into that coconut. It's a wonderfully bitey sort of consistency. So now just take a large mixing bowl. I find it easier even if it's a smaller quantity. If you do it in a big bowl, I feel like it's a little less messier. Now to this you can also add your flour. Before you attempt to knead the dough, just let it cool, otherwise you don't want any burnt fingers. So my dough is still quite warm, so I'm just sort of going to let it cool for a bit. But make sure it's not too cold either, because then it's only harder to knead it. So I'm going to give it another good 5 minutes of sort of resting period. My dough has cooled down considerably, so I'm just going to mix it and then decide how much water I want to add. Just like nicely knead it into a dough. So I'm just going to add some water into this. The idea is that it should be able to hold itself together, that's all. It doesn't have to be overtly soft or, rubbery or anything like that. But it should be able to sort of just stay in form. So to this I'm going to add a little bit of oil to help bind it together. Just a little bit. Sorry, my hands are so messy. Okay, not too much because you're again going to be frying it in oil, so you don't want it to crumble in the pan. So let's try making one and then we'll come to know whether it's good enough for it to stay in form. So this is how we want it to be. So it's like nice and thick, but at the same time it's holding its form together, and that's exactly how we want it to be. But it's a good idea to let your dough rest for 5 minutes before you sort of start, making little balls of it. So I'm going to just leave it and wash my hands and start all over again. I've left my dough to sit for 5 minutes. So before I start rolling out, little pathals, I'm just going to add some oil to a pan. You need to deep fry it, so you can take a wok or whatever works for you. I've opted to take a thick bottomed pan today. I'm just going to start rolling out the dough. We've got our first one already. Okay. So I find it easier to do both continuously so that you can still eat hot pathals. The second one. So I'm going to start frying because my oil is starting to heat up really well. There we go. Just make sure you're not also putting it on high flame and being, sort of, because what will happen is it'll burn on the outside but it won't cook on the inside. So slow flame is good to go. It will take more time, but it'll make sure that your pathals are evenly cooked. So it's not golden as yet, but that's okay. I'm going to make sure that both my sides cook before we get it up, sort of to a nice lovely golden color. I recommend that you try and use coconut oil to fry this because it really sort of punches in that flavor to it much better than any other oil. Okay, so now we can add, since we have space in our pan, I'm going to go ahead and add one more. So our first pathal is done. As you can see, it's like a lovely goldeny brown color. So now we can take out the rest as well as and when they're done. So this is the last of our Ney Pathals. You can have it any way you like it. If you're having it for breakfast, you can make yourself a little, wet stew or a mutton stew to go with it. For dinner, you could probably do something heavier like a, mutton curry or a chicken curry or even fish curry, which is a little more on the spicier side. Just drop some over the plate of the pathal and just, bite into it. If you're like me, then you're probably going to end up grabbing a cup of tea and eating it plain and simple. That's exactly what I'm going to do right now. If you enjoyed this recipe, do share the video and like and subscribe to our channel as well. Thank you.